Good morning, Herb and Jen and many members. Chuck Tenen. I wanted to bring up a couple things. The Marine Life Protection Act of 1999. The City Council needs to minimize the unwarranted closures of our recreational areas, the impacts that will have a direct impact on this city and its people. $100 million in local economy will be lost. $1 million in city tax revenue will be lost. Andrew, I need to meet with you. And Herb, the Tenants Opportunity to Purchase Act, it's April. Please schedule a discussion for all concerned, including Eric Garcetti, because he liked it. Action speaks louder than words, and you, Herb, are a proven man of your word and a leader in this city in getting things that need to get done and move forward. And also, I wanted to bring up the mayor's sponsored fishing trip last Saturday with the kids was a success. A lot of fish. Kids had a great time, except for one great big disappointment. The mayor didn't show up, and all the kids expressed disappointment because they were told that the mayor would be there, and they expected to meet him and fish with the mayor. Well, another example of, kids don't understand why, but it's good protocol to be around with the people. And Eric, your proposed idea to reduce 12 departments to 2 in development and planning areas, we're behind you 100%. Do it so people can be on top of the projects in the process, what's going on, and minimize the lack of efficiency to improve the protocol so the right things get done, and they do get done the right way with more control and simplified efficiency under one roof. And people, and also I wanted to bring up 60% of the contractors in the city that do rehab construction in condos and homes without permits and inspection, resulting in more loss of city revenue in a city that's hurting for revenue. And the last thing, people, I encourage you to speak at council meetings and committees to let them know what you want, what we need, and ways and programs to make the city a better place to live for its people with fresh new ideas, and your input in the decision-making process can help. Thank you.
Wait a minute, Chuck. So the mayor took 30 kids?
30, and he could have taken 60.
But what were the age ranges?
The age range was from about 7 or 8 to about 16.
And they came from all over the city?
All over.
Now, were the seas calm?
Well, at first it was a little bumpy, then it got calm. The kids didn't get sick. Only the mayor's representative got sick and slept the whole trip. I did all the work.
Well, see, that's what I'm trying to figure out.
Oh, that was Stephen Chung.
Now he's on the record.
He started out taking pictures, and he was all set. The minute he got on there, he says, "Please, Lord, let this trip end and get me off the boat." And all the kids, everyone had a good time. But
I'm just trying to figure out why.
Nobody can do it as well as Herb.
No, but
Herb makes it flawless, and he's there. And I'll tell you, those kids loved him, and they all smiled. And the mayor should do that with everyone.
But half of my kids got sick, Chuck. I'm trying to figure out what was the difference.
Well, your trip, it was a little smoother in that one because they had a good time. They wanted to be there.
Okay, well.
He was the only one, and I guess it was because, well, I shouldn't say.
No, don't say it.
Maybe it was because it's from the mayor's office.
Thank you. Okay. And I am extremely sorry that the mayor's representative got sick. The only one on the entire trip, and I'm joined by the president, Mr. Garcetti, who's going to, because I didn't hear the name of the mayor's, did you hear the name?
Stephen Chung.
And Mr. Chung is the mayor's representative.
Yes, Mr. Chung works for the mayor, I believe.
And he's the only one that got sick on the boat.
Yeah, he was sick. Mr. Chung got sick.
And those kids.
Okay, now that Mr. Tenen has disrupted the meeting, again, yeah, we're getting ready to roll. Many of you, if you didn't hear yesterday, I'm going to repeat it because I am a grandfather. Friday. My first one, I have a grandson, and Miss Perry. Yeah, I am too young to be a grandfather, and that's why I will not go by the name of grandfather. Miss Perry can tell you what my name will be.
Well, I wanted to.
No, not the one you want to call me.
Oh, okay. He said G Pop. Was that right?
G Poppy. G Poppy. All right. Okay. With that said, we have Mr. Garcetti. We have a quorum. We have several items that we're going to go through quickly. Even though I'm going to have to come up, Mr. President, with a new policy on time or whatever. Mr. Sachs is really blowing a hole in my consent calendar. So, Arnold, I want to figure out, we're going to have to limit you or give you 3 minutes at one time or whatever, because he's speaking on 3 areas today. But I think we can go, Ms. Barclay, you can read item 1.
Morning, Meg Barclay with the CLA's office. Item 1 are reports from the Community Redevelopment Agency and the City Administrative Officer and a resolution relative to amending a cooperation agreement with the Cultural Affairs Department.
Okay, on item 1, without objection, we will adopt the CAO report. Mr. Sachs, you have a card on item 2. Please come forward. In fact, I'm just going to keep you here and do your items real quick. In fact, what we'll do is we'll set the timer for a minute. Go on, Mr. Sachs.
Yes, good
Welcome.
morning. Good morning. Thank you. And this would go a long way towards limiting my cards. This item here is an increase, a 50% increase on the contract. They've already got, they got a 20% increase from $100,000 to $120,000. Now they're getting a 50% increase on top of that. What's with the bidding process on this contract for a feasibility study? What was included in the original feasibility study for the request for bids? What kind of information is given? That's like almost 80% increase on the original bid. That just does atrocious bookkeeping on both sides of the coin.
Okay, Ms. Barclay, Arnold, just stay there. I should have had her read the item first and then you speak. So read the item.
Item 2 is a report from the CRA and the Chief Legislative Analyst relative to increasing a contract with IBI Group to extend the contract term to continue the feasibility study for the downtown Red Car Trolley project.
Okay. Without objection on item 2, we'll adopt the CLA report. I now want to jump to item 5. Ms. Barclay, if you could read item 5. And then Arnold, Mr. Sachs, you can speak on that.
Item 5 are reports from the CRA and the CLA relative to establishing a CRA Healthy Neighborhoods policy.
This is a continued item. Thank you, sir. This is on January 23rd, Transportation Committee meeting. There was a grant from the Caltrans for $119,000 given to 2 nonprofits, Local Government Commission, LGC, and the Healthy Eating Active Communities, HEAC. I'm just curious, there's a lot of money going into healthy eating, and are there any results that can be brought up? Is there any time in review for this item to return before the commission to get an update on what exactly is being done with the money that's being spent?
You said item which one? I thought you...
This is item number 5.
Oh.
And I was referring to the transportation also got funding from Caltrans for healthy eating or for improved school and neighborhood pedestrian safety planning. But the 2 nonprofits, one was the Local Government Commission and the other one was the Healthy Eating Active Communities. And what they have to do with improved school and neighborhood pedestrian study is beyond me. This is, you're looking for a healthy neighborhoods policy, and on the 26th of March, the CRA and CLA got $230,000 from this grant for transportation strategies to improve food access in Southeast Los Angeles and related contract. I'm just looking for a date to find out what exactly is the money is being spent on.
Provide him with that data. Okay. So on item 5, without objection, we'll adopt the CAO report. That brings us to item 6. Ms. Barclay, if you could read item 6.
On just point of clarification on item 5, the staff report was from the CLA.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
My bad.
Item 6 is a report from the CRA and the CLA relative to increasing the purchase order for Myers, Nave, Ryback, and Silver for the defense of litigation related to the amended design for development for signs in Hollywood.
Quickly, that's a 70% contract increase. Who's doing the bidding? Who's looking at the contracts? Thank you for your time and your answers.
Thank you. On item 6, we'll adopt the CLA report. So that leaves us with what, items 3, 4, and 7?
8, 9, and 10.
Well, those are not on the,
Oh, sorry, yes.
yeah. I got that. So let's do item 3, if you could read item 3.
Item 3 are reports from the Los Angeles Housing Department and the CAO relative to requests for proposals for citywide fair housing services.
Okay, without objection, on item 3, we'll adopt the CAO report with technical amendments rather. Let's now do item 7.
Item 7 is a report from the Community Development Department relative to a contract with El Camino College Small Business Development Center as the program operator for the 2008-2009 Los Angeles Business Assistance Program.
Okay, on item 7, we'll adopt the motion. If we now move to item 4, and it's my understanding we have
did you say?
individuals from the public that want.
Excuse me, I read the wrong item on number 7. I apologize.
Which item?
I thought you'd said item 4. Item 7 was a motion.
No, I'm sorry. Then we will, we'll do item 7, and then I'm saving item 4 because I have 2 cards from the public, so
okay.
item 7.
I apologize for that.
It happens.
Item 7 was a motion, Wesson Reyes, relative to extending the master cooperation agreement for the Affordable Housing Trust Funds for 6 months with a new expiration date of September 14th, 2008.
Without objection, we'll adopt the motion. Okay, now that'll bring us to item 4. You can read that item, and then I will call for I have 2 cards from the public.
Item 4 is a report from the Community Development Department relative to a contract with El Camino College Small Business Development Center as the program operator for the 2008-2009 Los Angeles Business Assistance Program.
Okay, I have Alex Vaughn and Dr. Brassfield. Please come forward. Who's first?
I'm first. Good morning, Mr. Wesson. My name is Alex Vaughn. I'm the director for the Small Business Development Center at El Camino College. And we're here just basically to introduce ourselves and to express to the committee that we sent a proposal in for this contract because we're passionate about engaging the small business community and helping to bring their dreams to fruition. We have the infrastructure to do so. We have proven success at the El Camino SBDC. We're one of the leading service centers in the Los Angeles regional network, which covers Los Angeles, Ventura, and Santa Barbara counties. We have formed a great collaboration with Los Angeles Urban League, Brotherhood Crusade, Operation Hope, and West Angeles CDC to make sure that we are covering the South Los Angeles area and have offices that are easily accessible by the small business community. And we're ready to get out there today if we have to engage the community and get buy-in into the program, the features and the benefits of LABAP. And we're a good team. We're passionate about it, and I'm not a stranger to the community. I graduated from both Audubon Junior High School and Dorsey High School, so I'm not a stranger to the community and very involved in engaging small business owners and making sure that they have the tools needed to be successful out there in the small business market. And
Doctor?
Good morning. My name is Dr. Giovanna Brassfield. I, like the director, Alex Vaughn, do agree that the El Camino College Small Business Development Center it will best suit this particular audience in the South Los Angeles area for the Los Angeles Business Assistance Program. We are truly honored based on really putting forth a strong proposal as well as having our team come forth, your panel, and present why we should be selected for this particular proposal. And in doing so, we've developed many, many collaborative partners within the South Los Angeles area as well, which our director, Ms. Alex, just mentioned. We have an extensive background in business development, working with startups as well as existing businesses, and we can provide business owners with support needed so they can build capacity as well as address many hurdles and enterprise, enterprise components as well. And thank you.
Okay, thank you. On this item, there were some concerns were related to the RFP process. So the recommendation of the committee today will be to reject the recommendations from CDD and instruct the department to continue contracting with the current vendor. And I will arrange meetings with you so that you can understand why, as the chair, I'm making this recommendation. So without objection, that will be the order. That brings us to item, are we going to do items 8 and 9 together?
Actually, you can do item 8 on its own. The recommendation will be to, the necessary recommendations in item 9 are included in the report on item 8. So we can go ahead and do item 8 on its own.
Okay. Read item 8.
Item 8 is a report from the CRA, Department of Water and Power, Housing Authority of the City of Los Angeles, and the Los Angeles Housing Department, and the City Administrative Officer, relative to the 2008 Permanent Supportive Housing Program Notice of Funding Availability.
Okay, let's bring our A team forward. Mercedes, if you're in committee, you know I want to hear from you, so don't hesitate. That's your chair. If you look under it, the seat, you'll see your name on it.
Thank you, sir.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning.
Okay, I can, Angelica Samayoa with the CAO's office. I'll provide a broad overview of the CAO recommendations and allow the departments to provide the detail and the meat of the notice of funding availability. But approval of the CAO report would authorize these collaborative city departments, which again I will repeat, these include the LA Housing Department, the Community Redevelopment Agency, the Housing Authority of Los Angeles, and the Department of Water and Power. This collaborative anticipates awarding approximately $15.5 million provided from various city sources. This amount is a little bit higher than the amount that was noted in the original transmittal. Approximately, the original number was 14.6, so there's a little bit more funds available. There's also an accompanying 5.4 million in agency funds, which are taken from the Bunker Hill and Central Business District Trust Funds. These funds may be utilized to the extent that there are qualifying projects that are pre-screened and acknowledged and supported by the agency before the proposals are even considered for funding. Council and Mayor approval of this report would authorize the LA Housing Department to issue the NOFA, and the collaborative would then be reviewing the applications and report back to this committee or to this body for final approval of the recommendations. Interested developers may submit applications for gap financing of housing developments housing developments that feature operating subsidies and provide on-site services addressing the specialized needs of their target clientele. Funding commitments are also conditional because these project sponsors must apply for leveraging sources that are also identified in the CAO report. In addition, the item number 9 in this report it requested some authorities that are kind of reflected in this report as well, primarily that there is a cooperation agreement that is currently being revised and amended amongst these collaborative city departments. So the recommendations contained in the other report will be incorporated into an amended cooperation agreement, and that will be coming to you when the departments report back on the results of the NOFA. So that transmittal reflected the agency's recommendations. That will be pulled and combined with the other agency recommendations. In addition to reporting back with the recommendations, we'd also recommended that the LA Housing Department report back to you with a pipeline status of all projects that have previously been funded under other NOFAs, so that you can have a good sense of where all projects that have previously been acted upon are in the process of funding.
Thank you. Mercedes?
Good morning. This would be the third round of the Permanent Supportive Housing Program. As you may recall, we initiated this as joint agencies in 2006 for the first round. The program has been an unmitigated success. To date, while we'll put it in writing, we have already funded 503 units in the first two rounds. That constitutes $103 million in change in a combination of capital investment and operating subsidies in the form of project-based Section 8 from the Housing Authority. When we take a look at the total amount of investment, it is approximately $155 million in total development cost in terms of bricks and mortar. But when we take into account the operating subsidies, we're now over $200 million in investment in permanent supportive housing in the city since 2006. We believe that this next round, if approved by you all, will produce a minimum of 155 units. If the deals that come in also begin to reflect a CRA area and can take advantage of some of the DWP incentives, then the number will increase. That's where we are. I would say at the outset, what we begin to face, though, as we take a look at where we are in the budgets generally, in terms of federal budgets particularly, we are going to start seeing a deficit in this particular account as it comes to capital funds. You know that in the past what we've been able to do is set aside and have the Housing Authority work with us generously to set aside our goal of 300 units a year. They're able still to do that, but we don't have enough capital funding to reach that number. And so as we go forward, this is the account to look at, because this is where we'll have the fewest number of dollars to keep going. So I want to be upfront with you about that. We definitely have a capital funding problem as we go forward. And so as you think about other things you're doing, this is an important account.
You are always upfront, at least to me, and it's appreciated.
So that's where we are. It's working beautifully as planned, and I think that this particular NOFA reflects not only the needs in the city, but the differing values and missions of all of the agencies that are before you. I don't know if others would like to.
Okay, let's let everybody speak. So if you don't have the other two, the two gentlemen, if you don't have a prepared speech, you have about a minute or two to come up with one, because when she's finished,
I'll take a minute and 30 seconds.
yeah, make it hard. Just say who you are and then don't say anything, and we'll catch them. See how quick they are on their feet. Good morning. Good to see you again.
Good to see you, Councilmember. Delilah Sotelo with the CRA. Good morning, Council members. We're here in an unprecedented collaboration with the Housing Department, the Housing Authority, and DWP. For the better part of the last 6 months, we've been working on an integrated approach to how we all approach the problem of homelessness in the city of Los Angeles. As you know, it's a grave concern to all of us here in the city family about taking care of the needs of our homeless population. And at the CRA, we sincerely believe that this is truly the collaborative that we need to work together to put capital dollars and subsidy dollars on the streets. So what you have here today is a program that we have completely signed off on relative to how capital dollars should be invested in our community redevelopment areas, as well as an opportunity for us to leverage the state dollars that are going to be coming down. We have the tax credit program that is making available a larger percentage of its allocation to serve homelessness throughout the city, throughout the state of California. And then we also have a local county program that will help provide ongoing operating subsidy for permanent supportive housing, which means service-enriched on-site housing, on-site services, and housing for the homeless. So this is really an opportunity, as Mercedes says, to leverage not only our city dollars, but to leverage it against other public dollars that are coming in to the city of, the city of Los Angeles. And this collaboration, I hope, is, the continuation of a relationship that will put our CRA dollars to work in our redevelopment areas, along with the Housing Authority subsidies and along with capital dollars and investment dollars from the Housing Department. So thank you very much.
So before Ms. Perry speaks, she has a question. I want to let the two of you finish.
Good morning, council members. My name is Carlos Van Natter. I'm with the Housing Authority, City of LA, and the Housing Authority is pleased to be participating in the Permanent Supportive Housing Program. This third round of the NOFA is even more streamlined than the two previous ones. We've added language and clarified language to sponsors or proposers on how to apply for the entire range of money that's available. The Housing Authority is involved in the back-end operating subsidy piece, and we apply for that through the project-based voucher program with HUD, and we have further defined for sponsors all the requirements of that program and also the evaluation process of the money for that piece of the NOFA.
You're the closer.
I'm the closer. So, good morning, everyone. I'm Sean Spear, the Director of Major Projects for the Housing Department. I just wanted to summarize that, as Delilah alluded to earlier, the 6-month process we went through, really led by the Mayor's Office, was really designed to improve some of the basic operations of the Permanent Supportive Housing Program. So, in some respects, I think what it'll translate to is having a more clear sense for the developers of what the expectations are under the program, and in fact making sure that the internal operations of it between our departments run much more smoothly. I think when the program was originally started, there was really a desire to get the funds out as soon as possible, and in fact we needed to sort of fill in the gaps as we went along. And in some ways this much more reflects just what we've done together as the different agencies involved in the program, and in fact hopefully ensuring that the program itself will be much more smoother in terms of the operations between us.
Okay, thank you. Now, you said it was led by the Mayor's Office. Mr. Garcetti, what was the name of the representative that worked for the Mayor? Mr. Chung. Was he did you work with him?
I think he was sick at times.
Yeah. I like this man. And before, Ms. Perry, before you ask your questions, I just want to ask a question. In fact, I've been meaning to ask you this for about a month. I'm beginning to see an increase in homeless individuals throughout the entire district. And, I go east on Washington Boulevard in there. Why is it it doesn't seem like it was like that a few years ago.
Well, some of it has to do with the settlement of the Jones lawsuit, and that people are now permitted to sleep on the street between the hours of 9 p.m. and 6 a.m. as long as they don't obstruct driveways and doorways. So that's part of it. The other part of it is, and you and I both know this, which is why I have a little bit of concern about this today, people in certain areas of the city don't want to build any permanent supportive housing. They don't want any emergency housing. They don't want any transitional housing. And so as you see people migrating away from an area where they had historically been contained, and there's nothing for them to, there's nowhere for them to go, you're seeing them in the doorways and et cetera, et cetera. It's happening all over the city. I mean, I've seen homeless encampments as far west as 3rd and Fairfax now in the lobby of that theater up there. Just all over, basically. One of my concerns today was on the limitation of using these funds within redevelopment areas, because you and I both know politically there are some council districts that have fought for years to have any redevelopment area in their district because they don't want it, because it may cause them to have to put in 20% affordable housing, and they decidedly choose to reject it. That's a concern. I was going to ask Mercedes about that, and talk about it a little bit, but I think it's the confluence of political decisions not to even put emergency beds in an area, and then ultimately to have no continuum of care in an area, which would be emergency, transitional, then permanent supportive. Then people just don't have choice. They go out in the street.
And just as an anecdote here, on my street, I have a neighbor who, I won't say she was harassing me, she and I were programming together. There was a woman that would sleep on the sidewalk by her house. I mean, on a residential street. Now, that's the first that I've seen that.
There was an article in the paper a few weeks ago about a guy who died. He guarded the alley, and he was mentally ill, and he lived near the Bartlett, and wrote about the residents and how much they cared for him, and they'd give him money and food and things like that. But quite frankly, leaving people on the street doesn't do them any good. In the case of that lady, you can always call the LASA outreach workers, and they will basically go there and sit with her until she is convinced that she needs to go in and get some help. But allowing people to stay on the street does nothing other than basically put them in a position where they're vulnerable. I read in the paper the other day, a woman we had seen last year, maybe the year before, on one of our monthly walks on Skid Row over by San Julian and 5th Street, saw her at dusk and asked her to come in for a bed. And she clearly had some sort of addiction going on. Anyway, she was dead an hour later because she'd been stomped to death and in the head. And this is a lady who had a family. She had an apartment in South Pass. She had a support system, but she had an addiction. See in the paper the other day that the man who murdered her was convicted of second-degree murder. He actually came from my district too. So I was happy that they obtained a conviction, but that doesn't bring her back.
No, you're right.
And she refused to go into a bed that night. And there were beds available.
Just like I said, when we talked about it, it's just something I've been meaning to tell you for what. And the neighbor has a son who's afraid to go outside. Now she has disappeared, but I mean the neighbor would not even go out. So I mean, this is a nice big home.
Well, the LASA
swimming pool.
The LASA outreach workers, many of whom have recovered from various addictions and issues of homelessness, are very skilled at convincing even the hardest core service-resistant person to come in for services. So they will take their van and they will go out to wherever you need them to go out. They will sit with the woman until she basically decides she'll go in.
In the event that she returns, that's what I will do this time. But anyway, I'm sorry to throw us off. But Ms. Perry, you had some questions?
It didn't throw me out. It kind of segues into what I wanted to ask. I know last year the Permanent Supportive Housing Program funded about 229 units. Are all those units supported with Section 8 project-based vouchers from HACLA?
Yes, they are.
Okay. Now, this year's NOFA funding levels, I know I heard the figure 300. Is that going to differ from last year?
It is going to differ. We project that let's say the conservative number would be 155 units. Depending on where the deals come in, that number could go up. But you raise an interesting point. When we began the conversation, I was talking about the issue of the challenges of capital financing. And that you're right, it could skew where the development happens. Now, in both this program and in the regular trust fund program, it is, I would say, almost maybe 90% so, that most of the deals at this point, housing is so expensive to build that there is no CRA deal 90% of the time that does not also receive funding from the trust fund because it takes that much money to do it. So it is true that when the CRA invests in its own areas, they come forward. You know all about this. They come forward, and their deals will compete. That's that's a good thing. So we fund jointly virtually everything that they do. And that's what's necessary. In this particular, in the permanent supportive housing program, it is a bit different because some of the dollars that the CRA is putting in are credits, right? So where in the regular trust fund program, it would not count as a credit in the account. Here it counts as a credit. So you are right that more of the capital financing, cash that is available will go in, and so it will take away. But the only way to solve that is not so much not to build in the CRA areas. That won't solve our problem. The problem has to be solved by ensuring that there is more capital available in the fund. That's the only way to do this. Since CRA and LHD must fund together to get these things done, the issue is that we're lacking enough capital to go forward, and so it will tilt the balance of where the units are built because of the funding balance. But
will the infusion of capital still enable us to get beyond just the redevelopment areas?
yes, if we have the more capital we have available, the broader the spread will be.
Because, I make this point over and over again, that there, again, are areas that the city have proactively decided not to have redevelopment areas because they don't want to have to deal with these issues.
Well, you're right, but that means if they don't agree, any financing that would be available from the CRA in those areas just won't come forward, and so they won't ever count. The bigger question will we be able altogether to extinguish the credits that the CRA has available where they have them available? And, where they have them is, I don't know. Perhaps Delilah could speak to where that is.
In the requirement of getting a letter of support and acknowledgement from the CRA, is that our inherent limitation? Are we inherently limiting ourselves to permanent supportive housing projects in CRA redevelopment areas then? Basically, are we doing it to ourselves?
Well, if at the moment, both in this program and in the regular trust fund program, a threshold requirement is that the city council office must provide a letter to the housing department showing their support. And you're right, Councilwoman, that serves many purposes. On one hand, it forces the issue of a developer having to go into the community to get support for their deal, right? And it requires them to work with both the community at large and elected officials to ensure that as it moves forward to funding, that there is agreement in the community about the deal. In a redevelopment area, there is a separate letter that is also required because that would force the developer to also have to deal with the fact that they're in a redevelopment area and that they often have special requirements given their own guidelines, and so they have to go through that process. Where, this is that fine balance between making sure that you have community input and ensuring that community input isn't discriminatory, otherwise known as NIMBYs. Right? Mm-hmm. So that is the balance that we face, and that would certainly be open for discussion with you all about some other way to handle it.
Dig a little further in that, because obviously my goal is to try to get permanent supportive housing constructed across the city, whether you have a redevelopment area or not. One other question, credit versus real cash. Why does that get triggered in certain situations?
And Councilwoman, if I may, just to clarify Mercedes's point earlier, the $5.4 million that the CRA is contributing to this round of capital is from two different areas. It's from Bunker Hill and the Central Business District, and it is cash. We anticipate using 2.5 of it for the Downtown Women's Center if that indeed is funded through the NOFA and through the NOFA mechanism, where I think Downtown Women's Center is requesting 69 vouchers through the NOFA program. If that indeed is funded through the NOFA program, then that money will be counted towards our commitment of $5.4 million. If it is not funded through that process and through the NOFA allocation, then we will commit to putting an additional $2.5 million to substitute that.
So what's the process that you go through when you decide whether you're going to go with actual cash versus credit? Not specific to this particular deal.
part of what we've done in the last 6 months is just go through that. The NOFA for the CRA is one of many funding mechanisms that we use to fund permanent supportive housing. For example, in the last 5 months, we funded about 25 units outside of the permanent supportive housing NOFA in our redevelopment areas that didn't take any housing department money or any capital, and that actually didn't necessarily take any vouchers. So we have activities outside and beyond this NOFA where we fund permanent supportive housing in our redevelopment areas. We have a project right now coming up in the West Valley where we're working with Councilman Zine to identify group homes in his redevelopment area and look at 3 or 4 group homes within his area, and that would be outside of this permanent supportive housing NOFA. And it may not follow exactly the model of permanent supportive housing as articulated in this NOFA, and that's probably why we're not going through the NOFA itself. But when we come to cash versus credit, the redevelopment agency does many projects, and it does many projects on its own without the housing department capital funding being included in as part of its funding mechanism. What we're doing with our cash versus credit is we want an acknowledgement through the NOFA that the permanent supportive housing that we're funding does indeed reflect the values and reflect the characteristics as outlined in this NOFA. So in the case of Sunset Gower, for example, it was a $4 million commitment that we made to the project that actually helped to acquire the land and to make that project possible. But in essence, it should be counted towards our participation in the NOFA process. And if it's credit on that because we did that 2 years ago, then, that should be acknowledged. If it's cash that's needed to fund future allocations of the NOFA, then that's something that we're working very closely with our regional administrators to identify.
I think Mr. Garcetti.
Thank you. A couple of things. One, in terms of the DWP assistance, one of the issues I've been meaning to bring up with the previous NOFAs for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund is right now on the green building side, if folks use the DWP money for green building and energy efficiency, they get a concurrent reduction in their housing side allocation. Now, the economics of this are difficult, but we know, at least in the short term, upfront costs, sometimes there are additional costs on more energy efficient buildings, and wanted to know if the same setup was embedded here with the DWP money. I read through the NOFA but couldn't see that. And if it is, can we correct that?
Sure. Actually, the DWP funds, there's a portion that comes to the trust fund in general that basically relates to their sustainable building grants. Mm-hmm. That's additional funds that can be provided if they are willing to meet up to exceed Title 24 by 15%. Mm-hmm. There's been a few developers that have taken advantage of those additional funds. We'd want to see, and I think DWP as well wants to see more participation by the developers.
But you're aware of the issue. I mean, most of them have said, I won't do it because, then I lose money on the housing side. So it's my first time. There's no encouragement to do it for first-time affordable housing.
Yeah, I think for some of them, it's a question if they are maxing out on their loan under the trust fund, then it doesn't necessarily, because it comes within that overall loan limit, it doesn't necessarily help them. So, I think we can go back and take a look at that issue. And, in part, DWP is looking to revamp the program and try and make it more attractive. And so maybe given the
it's not so much your issue to revamp. It's all of our. It's a policy issue for us to say no, that money doesn't get then reduced out of the housing grant. So I don't think you have the power to do that yourself. But are we looking at that on the housing side?
There's been, since the last time we had a public discussion of this, even at the state level, the requirements in tax credits have changed substantially as it relates to green building. So there are many more. Actually, forget incentives, requirements now about moving to that. I think it would be, if that's where you wanted to go, an opportunity for the DWP funding to increase it above the cap. Actually, that would be fine with us because it's very difficult to spend. The DWP is frustrated by it. Mm-hmm. We're frustrated by the trying to fit into these puzzles that don't quite fit. Yeah. So that would be a great solution.
Okay. Well, let's work on that. But is the money that's in this then DWP money specifically for sustainable building, or is it general?
Both.
funding? It's both. It's the same combination.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, for the second half, maybe even between when we bring this to council. Is this in council today? Do we know? Friday. Okay, between now and then, like to look at that issue.
We don't have council.
Yeah, well, it's going to be Tuesday because of the firefighter funerals on Friday. Second, the 18% set aside for HACLA. Ms. Perry and I just with Mr. Rosendahl held a hearing on a report that was commissioned on looking at seniors, and I was wondering why there's any reason that seniors were excluded. I'd appreciate, because we've also done hearings in Ms. Perry's committee, the ad hoc committee on homelessness, on homeless youth, and how critical that's been, and I'm glad to see that specifically in here. But I know seniors are also a big area of focus from Ms. Perry and myself, and wondering if there's any reason that was excluded.
No particular reason. We received direction from our board to give bonus points for homeless families and transition age youth, and I'm sure we'll be looking at the same kind of process for seniors. Within the overall NOFA, on the project-based voucher side, supportive services are required for tenants who live in the projects, and another major focus is seniors and disabled people.
So I don't know, Ms. Perry, if we want to do something specifically to encourage HACLA to add seniors to that too, but I think that might be
Given the last report we just got from Ruth
Yeah.
Schwartz, I would say that it's we're going to be in a crisis.
and the
if we're
testimony we
not
heard.
already.
And a lot of these seniors we heard from, I mean, they're homeless for the first time in their lives, and it's because they can't afford the moving costs as the rent go up. This is why they're homeless. I mean, it's a really scary knife's edge that they're on. So those two things I'd like to look at. Thanks.
Ms. Perry?
I'd just like to get, maybe before we go to council, a list from CRA on what projects are being done with the housing department money. Maybe we can do this before council, get this list.
Can we do that by Tuesday?
Absolutely.
Let's see then, or do you want it?
Well, Tuesday's
Does that
fine.
work?
Yeah,
Okay. So for the period for permanent supportive housing?
yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I want to see how many projects have been done with money with CRA, yeah.
Okay. Well, I want to,
How about the last 2 years?
Happy to do that.
Yeah.
okay. Then there are no cards from the public. Without objection, we will, on item 8, we'll adopt the CAO report. On item 9, we'll hold in committee.
Yes, sir.
That brings, oh, I'm sorry, Chuck. Yeah, a card on number 9. So let's, you guys can sit, and then I want to have Chuck Tenen come and speak on item 9, and then we'll go to item 10, Ms. Barclay. Mr. Tenen, welcome back.
Thank you. You know, you need to include in permanent supportive funding to help seniors, low income, affordable housing, and disabled. The down payment assistance program and the rehab program was cut by the LAHD, yet the DWP wants 10% increase, and they're supposed to be a partner and a stakeholder in permanent supportive housing funds. Why don't they fund more things like the housing assistance program, the purchase assistance program, and the rehab? It's funny, they support incentive programs like they give away free refrigerators, and then on top of it, gee, you're old when you get $35. And then they do things like you get $1 a square foot for low-E windows, and they have flooring and heating. And, you know, they should do more. They want the 10%. Well, they should do more things like that. If they have programs now like giving away free refrigerators and giving you $35 for the old one, and $1 a square foot for windows is a lot. And then there's a case in point about developers who back out of housing projects and development projects that use our city's planning and housing agencies to get approvals to build at the expense of others, and then they abandon their projects because of failure or the market. I'll give you a case in point, like on Magnolia, 2 buildings sitting vacant for a year for sale, empty, not doing anything, loss of affordable housing that could have been used to rehab and could have been saved, could have come under TOPA, could have been done under something, but they're sitting there. There were 52 people in that building, and there's a lot of others in the area the same developers are backing out of, and yet they use the city at the expense, the city. It costs the city and it costs people, and they get away with it. Who bails them out? Does this program here, the permanent supportive funding, does it bail out developers that back out? Thank you.
Thank you, Chuck. Okay, so then let me reiterate on item 9. We will hold that item in committee. That brings us to what I believe to be the last item of the day, which is item number 10. Ms. Barkley, if you could please read the item.
Item 10 is a report from the Los Angeles Housing Department and a motion, Hahn, Rosendahl, Reyes, Alarcon, relative to drafting an ordinance requiring mobile home park owners to offer new tenants a choice between short and long-term leases, and also drafting an ordinance to bring the municipal code regarding city regulation of mobile home parks into compliance with rates in the recently adopted tenant relocation ordinance.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning, council members. Hakim Mordezai with the Housing Department. There are approximately 60 mobile home parks with 6,600 mobile homes in the city of Los Angeles. And they constitute an important form of housing for primarily low-income families, disabled, and elderly residents in the city. And typically, when somebody, what happens in a mobile home setting is that someone buys a mobile home, but they rent the space. And the rent for that space is subject to the rent stabilization ordinance. And mobile homes are subject to the RSO if their first permit to operate, which is something that's issued by the state, was issued before February 10th of 1986. And that pretty much covers every mobile home in this city. State law, however, under the mobile home residency law, creates an exemption. And it says that if your lease is longer than 12 months, you're exempted from local rent control like the RSO. And what the motion that's before you, the Hahn, Rosendahl, Reyes, Alarcon motion, the first part of the motion, what it does is that it really creates a fully informed choice for a person moving into a mobile home setting. Because what it does is it requires a mobile home park owner to offer a short-term lease, which is something for 12 months or less, which under state law would be subject to the RSO. And it informs the person signing the lease that if you sign the long-term lease, you are going to be exempted from rent control. So you get to make the choice whether you want to have RSO protections or have a 5-year, 10-year, 15-year lease. That's the first part of this motion, and the Housing Department fully supports this first part of the motion. The second part of the motion, what it does...
But just let me ask real quick.
Yes.
Suppose is it some kind of a requirement that the landowner would offer the 12-month or less lease?
What it does is
the tenant requests that, or is this just a possible option? He or she could say, no, I don't want to do 12 months, or...
What it sets up, if I understand you correct, Chairman Weston, is that what this ordinance would do is that it would require the park owner to offer the short-term lease as well as the long-term lease, which they were going to offer anyway. And so that the tenant...
he would have to, the owner would have to offer the 12-month or less if the person is going to be renting the space wanted that. So that answers my question.
Not if they just wanted it. They'd have to do it. We're not going to leave it up to the person to ask for it. They'll have to offer it.
Okay, so they'll be required to present those options.
Yes, they will.
Gotcha.
And they'll be informed by the big, bold font that this contract is subject to rent control, this one's not.
Gotcha.
And the second part of this ordinance, which we also support, is that it conforms the relocation amounts under the specific section of the mobile home, the specific section of the municipal code for mobile home park closures to the amount that's in the RSO that was enacted by all of you in ordinance last year. And when we looked at it, these things don't happen very frequently. We just had, I think, the first one in over 5 years, a mobile home park closure. And what we found was that the rental disparity of the people who are living in the mobile home parks are even greater than the ones that we found in apartments for people who are being Ellised. And as a result,
Example, give us example.
well, in this park, there were approximately $400 on average for most of the spaces that were being removed from the rental market, as opposed to when we were looking at the previous calculations in the ordinance last year, where there were about $700. So going to rental market is an even greater jump, and as a result, conformity is definitely called for in terms of relocation amounts in mobile homes as well as it is in apartment buildings. So we support this aspect of the motion as well.
I would only add that these actions start to put us in line with the intent of state law. Right? So a lot of these things are catch-up issues. And also, of course, that we're talking, when we're in mobile home parks, we're talking about some very vulnerable people. Lots of seniors are in these mobile home parks. So they've been at an uneven, kind of unfair keel. The state law has pushed us, to make sure that we have some equity, and this brings us to that.
Thank you.
If I might, just for
Yeah, of
1
course you
second.
may.
I don't get the chance to do it, but I would like to tell you what a fine job this man is doing.
This is not the mayor's representative, Mr.
Not the
Chuck.
mayor.
I don't get sick on boats.
I think you need to reiterate that this is not Mr. Chuck.
This is not Mr. Chuck.
He seems...
He doesn't even know the mayor's representative. Boy, this boy, I sure hope he's not a big guy, Mr. President. We're going to have to take the sergeant with us.
Maybe we can take him. Don't worry.
Together. You hit him first.
All right, you got it.
It was a good presentation, and I'm always impressed when he speaks before the committee. Are there any questions? Then, without objection, I would say that the Housing Department, coupled with the City Attorney's Office, should move forward to prepare an ordinance for our review. Just let me ask, about how long do you think something like that? What's a realistic? And I'm not trying to put
30 days.
a time limit on you. I'm just being nosy.
Completely under the gun here, but I've got some litigation now, and then we're working on the residential hotel ordinance, and once that is in place, then we can get this done probably in a matter of 3 weeks, I think.
Okay. Thank you. So without objection, that'll be the order. Is there any more business before this committee, Ms. Barclay?
No, sir.
No, then this committee's adjourned.
All right, baby.
Where's that thing from Chuck? I want to keep that. You got it?